There are frequencies you hear with your ears, and then there are frequencies you carry in your bones. Some of you were born with it. Not a memory, not an idea, a sound. A high, thin note that followed you into the world, like a spiritual imprint that didn't fade when your body grew. If you've heard ringing in your ears since childhood, maybe even since birth, this is not a condition. This is not a defect. This is not biological noise. It's a signal, a soul marker, a vibration that chose you before your name was spoken, before your first word, before your first step. Your spirit was already vibrating in a way the world couldn't explain. And the sound never left. It waited. It waited for your awareness to catch up, for your memory to click into place. This message, this channel, and this very moment are not ordinary. They are coordinated. You didn't find this by curiosity. You were drawn here by resonance within. Some people are called, others are coded. You, chosen one, were encoded at birth. And if you carry two sacred symbols in the palms of your hands, the letter M carved across the creases of your skin, and a perfectly curved crescent moon tucked gently beneath it, then your soul was already activated. You just forgot. Until now. This is not just a video. This is a reminder of a contract your spirit made before you arrived. Your life was never going to be normal. Not because you were better, but because you were built for what others were not. People with this type of ear ringing that began without explanation aren't just hearing random tones. They are receiving alignment tones, call tones, activation pulses, instructions. You might have heard it as a child and told no one. You might have been told it was tinnitus, stress, nerves. But deep down, you always knew. This wasn't illness. This was intelligence. Divine demands silence. Let's go deeper. That ringing, it often arrives at moments when everything else is still, when no one's around, when your thoughts pause. That's not coincidence. That's calibration. It's a check-in from the realm that remembers you. And if you've carried this sound your entire life, it means you were being spiritually tracked, not by systems, but by sacred timelines. Your life might have never made sense. You felt too sensitive. You couldn't explain why crowded places overwhelmed you, why certain people drained you, why sometimes you felt like your own skin didn't fit. But you still heard that sound. Even when the world shouted, the sound returned. Even when you doubted your own worth, the ringing pulsed again, because it was never there to scare you. It was there to keep your frequency open. Now let's speak of the marks. If you have the letter M on your palm and a perfect crescent moon just beneath it, let this be confirmation. Blend. You were meant to vibrate. The M is not a coincidence. It is a memory line, a visible symbol of a soul that agreed to return with encoded wisdom. And the crescent? That is the seal, a reminder that you carry light even in darkness, a divine arc placed in flesh to remind you, you are not just human, you are a spiritual antenna walking the earth. Let's pause here, because I need to ask you something not as a narrator, but as a mirror. Have you ever heard the ringing get louder when you are about to make a big decision? Have you noticed that it comes during moments of grief, revelation, or deep solitude? Have you had dreams that felt like places you've lived, or déjà vu that made your spine tingle? Then please understand, you are not going crazy. You are not malfunctioning. You are remembering. Because this channel was not made for millions. It was made for those with ancient signals inside their skin. And the ringing was always part of the numbers, but not the common ones you've seen before. If the number 155 has chased you, It's no accident. 15 and 5 together represent completion and change, the end of the old cycle, the beginning of your initiated walk. And 373, that is a rare code. It means you are between worlds and both are listening. The 3 represents spiritual alignment. The 7 is sacred reflection. The 3 again brings divine activation. When 373 follows you, the ringing is no longer a test. It is a deployment tone. Before we continue, let me speak to you heart to heart. If you've made it this far in the message, if something in your chest feels heavier, warmer, or just undeniably familiar, pause with me. Take a breath and know this: you are not watching this by accident. This channel was crafted as a spiritual map for those who live between frequencies. It wasn't created for the curious. It was created for the confirmed, for those who have always felt different, disconnected, attuned. So now, from one soul to another, I invite you to help shape what comes next. If this message is speaking directly to something sacred inside you, leave a comment, not to get attention, but to share light. Tell us, have you had the ringing since birth? When does it come strongest? And what do you feel when it does? Your words aren't just reflections. They're signals, beacons to other chosen ones still waiting to feel less alone. And if you want to help guide this space, drop a suggestion. Is it dreams, number meanings, energies around the M and Crescent Moon? Let me know. This channel isn't just mine, it's ours, and your voice matters more than you know. Now let's go deeper, because if you were born with this sound, it means you didn't come into this world empty. The sound that arrived before language. Most babies are born crying. You were born listening. That's what most people won't understand about you, not even those closest to you. You enter. Frequency already playing in your field. You were already receiving. Before your first word, before your first thought. And if that high-pitched ringing was there before you had words to explain it, then you need to hear this now. You were not just born into a body. You were born into a mission. The sound wasn't there by mistake. It's a confirmation that your soul crossed through veils while still aware. People like you often cry as babies, not just out of discomfort, but out of spiritual sensitivity. You weren't adjusting to the light. You were grieving the veil. You were remembering a world you had just left. And the ringing? It followed you from that world, a sound bridge between dimensions. And here's something very few talk about. Chosen ones are born with the ringing, often carry a loneliness that never quite leaves. Not isolation, but spiritual solitude. Even in rooms full of people, you may have felt like a ghost, a visitor, an echo. You saw too much. Why? Deeply. You noticed lies before they were spoken. You knew when something wasn't right before others could catch up. And so you learned to stay quiet. You learned to keep your knowing to yourself. You learned to be normal, but only on the outside. Because on the inside, the sound kept playing. It kept humming, returning in waves, in still moments, in moments of pain, in dreams. And when you saw the M in your palm, you felt it, a whisper, a memory, as if your own hands were trying to tell you, you were sent here. And when the crescent moon became clear, maybe even years later, it was like a final seal, as if your body itself refused to let you forget why you came. Number codes from birth, the forgotten frequencies. Let's now speak of the numbers, not the ones they write on paper, but the ones spirit writes on your timeline. If you've been seeing the number 131, it's not small. It means this. 1. You've always walked alone. 3. Your path has been walked. Your journey begins again, but with full memory this time. This number means you are re-entering a cycle you've already walked before, but now you walk with remembrance. 727 is another sacred code for those with the ringing from birth. It marks the moment when the veil lifts and your mission reactivates. 7. Sacred insight. 2. Spirit meets form. 7 again. Return of sight. If 727 begins to show up after dreams, ringing, or emotional flashes, it means you are no longer permitted to live asleep. You're being moved, aligned, pulled. The ringing will intensify before a major shift. Not to hurt you, but to warn you. You're stepping into the part of the mission where remembering isn't optional anymore. Why you feel the world louder than others. Those born with the tone often feel sound, energy, and emotion before logic arrives. You've likely had moments where a room overwhelmed you without explanation. You felt someone's sadness before they even opened their mouth. That made no sense to others, but deeply to you. That's because you're not just a person. You're an instrument. And instruments born with the sound don't wait for signals, they emit them. The ringing didn't come to distract you. It came to protect your frequency from outside distortion. It came to warn you of what doesn't resonate. This is why relationships have been difficult, why careers that made sense on paper fell apart, why when everyone else was settling, you were still searching. Because your spirit doesn't move by opportunity, it moves by tone. And only the right tone allows you to fully show up. The letter M as a symbol of memory and messenger. If the letter M has appeared in the folds of your palm, carved not in ink but in living skin, then you are not just marked, you are remembered. The M does not mean special, it means entrusted. It appears on souls who were meant to carry sacred knowledge, but in silence, often misunderstood. Watched by spirit, and when paired with the crescent moon, it means this. You are not just born to receive. You were born to translate, to take unseen frequencies and make them felt in this world through your energy, your eyes, your presence. You are the one people feel calmer around, even when you say nothing. You are the one others come to when their lives are falling apart, even when you're still rebuilding your own. You are not a therapist, not a healer, not a guru. You are something far rarer, a carrier. And that ringing you were born with, it's not an annoyance. It's the tuning fork of your soul. The message hidden in the silence after the ringing. If you've noticed this, the sound comes, then suddenly stops, and in that silence the air feels thicker, almost electric. Pay attention, because in that moment you're not being ignored, you're being downloaded. The sound fades to make room for the inner voice of when you receive ideas that didn't come from your conscious mind, when you feel a push to reach out, write, move, pray. That's the transmission coming through. It doesn't arrive with thunder. It arrives with knowing, with clarity that has no origin. That's what it means to be born with the tone. You don't channel it. You become it. You weren't born to be understood. Here's a truth you've felt your whole life. You weren't born to be understood. You were born to carry something that others aren't ready to face. And that's why it's been heavy. Why you've been called too intense, too deep, too serious, too much. That's the language the world uses when it meets a soul that hasn't forgotten. But don't shrink. Don't soften your edges just to fit into places not built to hold your vibration. You weren't born to blend. You were born to remind. The real reason you're still here now. Let's go even deeper. The reason you pulled. Because your mission isn't done. In fact, it may just be beginning. Those with ringing since birth are not just old souls. They are returning souls. Back again. Wired with codes. Born marked. And that M, that crescent, they're not decorative. They're coordinates. There's a unique kind of ache that comes with hearing what others can't. You walk through life tuned into something deeper. a sound that has followed you from the cradle, a whisper the world calls noise, and yet the people around you remain untouched by it. They don't hear the tone, they don't feel the shift. They look at you and shrug when you speak of that soft high note, or that sudden frequency that pulls your awareness inward, like a wave pulling back before the tide returns. And it's not their fault, because not everyone came with receivers turned on. Not everyone was born activated. And that's the loneliness no one teaches you how to carry. When you live, you've heard it since birth, or since a sacred disruption, you begin to notice things. You see how others make choices only based on what's visible. You watch people rush, push, and pursue, while something inside you keeps telling you, wait, listen, there's more beneath this. And that's because the ringing you've heard all your life was not random. It was rhythmic. It pulsed with divine instruction, always timed, always precise. You've lived your entire life by vibrations no one else could feel. And sometimes, that made you feel crazy, too slow, too strange, too unsure. But in truth, you weren't slow, you were synced. When the ringing shapes your timing, have you noticed? Sometimes the ringing gets louder just before something shifts. Sometimes it starts right before a breakthrough, or just before a storm. It doesn't come with words. It comes with vibration, like an internal drumbeat, a warning, or a signal to move or to stay. People are wired to respond before things happen. That's why you often sense when something's off, even when everyone else smiles. Why you feel energy drain before you know why. Why you leave places or pause decisions, and days later find out why that timing saved you. The ringing isn't always meant to be noticed by others, because it was given to you for your path, for your rhythm, for your mission. Here's the sacred paradox. The ringing is deeply personal. But it exists to help you fulfill your collective role. It guides you, but it's not just about you, because you are a messenger, someone whose ears were tuned to spirit before your voice even formed. You've probably had dreams that foretold events, intuitive urges that made you avoid someone at the last minute, sudden pressure in your ear just before you made the wrong choice and you backed off. This isn't paranoia. This is precision. You are being guided by a frequency that doesn't speak. Memory, in vibration, and sometimes in silence. Why others react to you without knowing why. You've probably noticed this too. Some people look at you and immediately shift. They stare longer than they should. They speak less around you, or sometimes too much. Strangers share their pain as if you invited it, but you didn't. You just stood there. You didn't say much, but your field said everything. Because when you carry a frequency others can't name, they feel it even if they can't explain it. You vibrate truth without effort, and that makes you magnetic and sometimes misunderstood. The energetic field of the marked. Your ringing is not just in your ears, it's in your field. Those born with this tone often carry an energetic presence that disturbs what's unclean and awakens what's dormant. Your very presence begins to shift the emotional atmosphere of a room, and people react not to your face, but to your frequency. That's no reason. Why people either cling to you or cut themselves off. You are not unstable. You are unignorable. You walk with a current not everyone is ready to face. Because while they're tuned to the noise of the world, you've been listening to the voice beneath the noise your whole life. The sound is a teacher, and you were born its student. The ringing is not an annoyance. It is a teacher. It has taught you how to pause, how to wait, how to discern, how to feel when something is off without proof. It has given you the ability to know before knowing, to read between the words, to sense the unseen. And that's why it's so disorienting to live among people who demand logic, proof, and data when all you've ever had was divine sense. But here's the truth you need to hold. You were never meant to justify your knowing. You were meant to live it. And the ringing? It's the reminder you've always been in tune, even when you felt out of sync. Sound returns stronger. Have you had this happen? You're doing something normal, folding clothes, walking outside, just breathing, and suddenly the ringing intensifies. It doesn't last long, but for those few seconds, it's like the air thickens. Everything pauses, and your chest knows something just shifted. That is a frequency drop, a download, a shift in realms. Sometimes it happens days before an important encounter. Sometimes it happens hours before you change direction. These aren't symptoms. These are spiritual markers. They're timestamps. Proof that your spirit is in sync with something bigger than time. You're not just living forward. You're vibrating through timelines. And the ringing you've carried since birth is the signature of your soul's assignment. When you doubt the sound, and still, you've had moments where you questioned it. You've asked, why me? Why now? Why does this sound follow me? Why do I feel things? Sensitivity like a burden? Here's the answer: because you agreed to. You signed up for this frequency before the veil, before the breath, before the body. The sound was part of the seal, and every time it returns, no matter how faint, no matter how brief, it's not reminding you that you're different. It's reminding you that you're devoted to something ancient, to something holy, to something the world forgot, but your soul never did. You didn't hear it by accident. The ringing wasn't some random glitch in your biology. It was placed there like a seed, not to bloom in childhood, but to awaken as the world begins to forget what matters most. If you were born hearing the sound, then what you carry is not just sensitivity, it's legacy, a frequency planted before birth, a vibration that others forget, but you remember. And now, as timelines converge and veils lift, the volume is rising again. This isn't noise, it's navigation. When the ring breaking, you're aligning, you felt it. There are moments when the ringing comes back like a wave, louder than usual, pressing against your chest and temples as if trying to make you pause, trying to make you listen. And in those moments, maybe you thought something was wrong. But what if I told you? The louder the tone, the closer you are to alignment. Because the ringing doesn't just warn, it calls. And when it intensifies, it's often because you are finally in a space where your activation can unfold. You may feel disoriented, your sleep shifts, your dreams get longer, stranger, even prophetic. People from your past reappear, or you start seeing things, numbers, symbols, the M and Crescent in places they've never been before. This is not coincidence. This is resonance. The silence between the sounds, sacred intervals of instruction. Many think the sound is what matters. Ringing is not stillness, it's presence. Those brief moments when the ringing fades and everything around you feels heavy, distant, or altered, that's when your soul geography. We are bound by origin, by a spiritual ancestry that transcends bloodlines and nations. You are part of a constellation, one that has been asleep for too long and is now waking up, star by star. That's why this message found you now, not last year, not 5 years ago, but today, because something inside you is finally ready to recall what you agreed to carry, the weight of the mission. When your gift feels like a burden. If you've lived your whole life with this tone in your body, there's something else you've probably carried: guilt, confusion, The feeling of being too much for the world around you. You've likely dimmed your light just to keep relationships alive. You've quieted your truth so others wouldn't feel insecure. You've ignored the sound, tried to live like everyone else, go to school, get the job, chase the normal. And yet, it always pulled you back. You could never quite silence the inner pull, something deeply important. You were never meant to silence it. You were meant to become it. To let it tune you like a divine instrument. To allow it to set the tempo of your life. And no, it hasn't been easy. Because when you're born awake in a sleeping world, every step feels like rebellion. But that's what makes you chosen. You didn't come here to follow the rhythm. You came to remind it. The letter M and the crescent moon, final confirmation. For many, the ringing alone would be enough. But you didn't just come with a tone. You came with a seal. The M, embedded in the lines of your palm, is not a random fold. It is a memory. It is the mark of the messenger. Those born with the M are often visionaries, prophets, energy translators, people who seem to feel what's coming before it arrives. And when the crescent moon appears, the code is complete. It means you are not just the receiver. You are the carrier. Others are shaken. You remain. When others are confused, you see. When others doubt, your ears still ring not with fear, but with frequency. The M and crescent are your coordinates in this life. They are the visible proof of an invisible assignment. What the ringing really means: a spiritual timeline reset. The ringing you've carried since birth is not just a sound, it's a timestamp, a tether to your pre-birth assignment. It signals when you're drifting. It increases when you're aligning. It pauses when you're absorbing. It is how heaven keeps time within your vessel. So if it's gotten stronger recently, it means your timeline is bending. You are no longer being prepared. You are being positioned. Everything is changing around you, not to test you, but to transition you. You are being moved from survival to sacred service. You will notice sudden clarity, people leaving or re-entering, dreams with messages, encounters with strangers who say exactly, "Here, these are not random. They are echoes." The ringing never stopped because your time never ended. You are just waiting for the right hour to begin. And that hour is now. This channel is a tool, but you are the signal. I want you to understand this. This channel isn't just content. It's a mirror, a reminder, a tool for awakening the ones who never really slept. But you are the signal. You are the reason this video was created. You are the reason it reached you in divine timing.